Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what is going on? My name is M1K3 and today we are starting the FNCS videos. However, this video is also very relevant to the duos and solos cash cups. Today's topic is common mistakes made in Opens tournaments that often stops you from qualifying. Before we get into that, around 39% of you guys watching are not subscribed. So, if you have been enjoying the daily uploads so far, consider subscribing. Now, let's get into today's episode. I want to start this video off by talking about one of the main factors behind why talented players sometimes, though rarely, fail to qualify through FNCS Opens. The playstyle and mindset I'm about to talk about also applies to both duos and solos cash cups. But of course, when you need to get top 50 and top 100 to qualify, in comparison to the needed top 2000 you supposedly need to qualify through Opens in duos FNCS, the margins are way thinner. What I'm talking about is of course not doing things you haven't done before. Alright, let me explain. You know when you sit down after a tournament and go over a few games with some friends and they say, "Why didn't you just go for high tier? It would have been a free win." Or, "Why didn't you just W key that team? It would have been a free refresh." And you think to yourself, yeah, I should have probably done that. So in the next tournament, without practicing going for height or practicing fighting, you just start doing what your friends told you to do, because you think it's the right thing to do. But here comes the problem. On a tournament day, you can't afford to even have one game where you go for something you haven't practiced. Just because something theoretically is the right thing to do doesn't mean you, as an individual player, should go for that play. And this is so important to remember for Opens. If you've only been playing low ground in practice for the past 2 months, don't waste your game going for high ground. If you've only been practicing playing safe and not fighting, then play safe and secure the qual. And if you've been very successful playing high ground in practice, then please play high ground. Don't all of a sudden start playing low ground just because it's a tournament day. It's important to remember that you can't suddenly become a high ground demon if you've only been playing low ground and mid ground for the past 2 months. You're not all of a sudden gonna be the best W keyers in the world if you haven't actively been grinding fighting. And if you've been successful in height in prac, then please keep going for and playing height in tournaments. In short, don't allow yourself to waste a game going for something unless you feel comfortable doing it. Don't throw your qual because something theoretically is the right thing to do, because you know yourself whether or not a play is good based off your own knowledge of your own skills. FNCS starts February 17th, and that gives us quite a lot of time to practice to become an adaptive player. Adaptive player? What am I talking about? Well, as important as what I just said in the first few minutes of this video is, a player is unfortunately only as good as his biggest weakness. Some players practice competitively for 3 years without ever focusing hard on their weaknesses. They play for 3 years pretty much never going for height. Or they play for 3 years never actively and intensively practicing their fighting. Or, for that matter, anything else. Structured practice is how we can easily set ourselves up for success. A lot of players get home from school, sit down on their PC, and do the same thing every single day for years on end, never taking just 5 minutes asking themselves what they really need to practice on. An adaptive player is someone who can go into an endgame and at a high level play low ground, mid ground, and high ground. Adaptive players are the players who succeed in competitive, because as we know, every game is played out differently, and there are thousands of ways to win games, as well as there are thousands of ways to lose games. So my biggest tip is to start heavily practicing high ground if you're bad at that. High ground is unarguably the best position this season. And if you can learn to play that at a very high level, you won't even have the tiniest bit of trouble making it out of Opens. If you're bad at fighting, then take some intense sessions where you try to get in a lot of repetitions of fighting against different players. And if you struggle with playing mid or low ground, try focusing on that. The essence here is to know your weakness and focus hard on improving that weak point of yours as much as possible before the first FNCS of 2022. Moving on, I want to talk about how more than skilled enough new competitive players often fail to qualify, even through FNCS Opens, although they are so much more than good enough. For a lot of competitive players, FNCS means a ton, right? And this again means that if something goes bad in any given game, then the vibes in the duo might be significantly worse. Some players also get directly mad at their teammates, and this is unfortunately something that throws hundreds of qualifications. Getting mad at your teammate comes at a high price. You might make him insecure, which again results in him playing worse for the remains of the tournament. And you're gonna feel pretty bad playing the game you hop into. And getting mad at your teammate really comes at zero benefit. It's not like he's gonna become 10 times better immediately because you flame him because of how he died in the previous fight you were in. It's actually the opposite. Most players play worse when the team vibe is bad. And since FNCS means so much for a lot of people, it's very easy to get mad and very frustrated. But I swear to God, if I see one Marin TM viewer flaming his teammate, I'm gonna be severely disappointed. It's unsportsmanship to the biggest extent, and honestly, just very, very embarrassing. The final thing I need to talk about in today's video is warming up for an hour before the tournament starts. So honestly, I don't really care if you warm up before duo and solo cash cups, even though I of course highly recommend it. But before FNCS, if you have the time, then please make sure to spend 1 hour before the tournament begins just doing something. Not only will you, generally speaking, play at a higher level, but you will also find yourself being way more consistent. And we've all been in a situation where one missed edit or one missed shot has cost us a kill. And spoiler alert, an elimination can be the difference between qualifying and not qualifying. So make sure you're on at least 1 hour before FNCS starts. And warm up those mechanics and get in some aim practice as well. A bonus tip is also to eat around 1.5 hours before the tournament starts. It's not a good idea to eat right before, so I recommend eating around 30 minutes before you get on to warm up. But guys, that is going to be all for today's daily upload. I really hope you enjoyed, and I honestly can't wait for Duo's FNCS. With that all being said, please go on to have an amazing night. My name is Marin TM. Stay safe and take care.